Look at this Japanese maple. There's a lot of new growth here, and at this time of year, the temptation is to start cutting everything back. But I'm not going to do that, because as we move from the end of August into September, I need to start looking at these trees differently. Some growth needs to come off, some growth I'm going to leave completely alone, and some branches that look completely wrong right now could actually be some of the most useful growth on the tree. So today I'm going to take you around my Japanese maples and show you exactly what I'm looking at before I make a cut. The first thing I do isn't pick up the scissors. I look, and I know that sounds obvious, but it's probably one of the easiest things to forget. When you've got a tree covered in growth, your eyes immediately go to the longest branches, but long doesn't automatically mean bad. So I'm looking at the whole tree first. Where is the trunk going? Where are my main branches? What's growing in the wrong direction? What's crossing? And most importantly, what stage is this tree actually at? This maple is still being developed, and that changes everything. If this was a finished tree, I'd be thinking much more about refinement. But on developing material, I want to preserve useful growth. This is something I really want beginners to get their heads around. There are basically two very different jobs we do with bonsai: development and refinement. When I'm developing a tree, I'm trying to build the trunk, create taper, and establish the main structure. I'm not worried if every branch looks perfect. When I'm refining a tree, that's when I'm much more concerned with things like ramification, internodes, and keeping the silhouette tight. So if I took the same pruning approach to both trees, I'd probably get one of them completely wrong. Now this is the sort of branch that makes you want to cut. It's long, it's sticking out, and if I'm looking at a finished bonsai, I probably don't want it there. But this tree isn't finished, and that's where I have to stop myself from pruning just because something looks untidy. This stem has leaves, it's grown strongly, and those leaves are producing energy through photosynthesis. So if I remove it, I'm not just removing a branch, I'm removing foliage that the tree is using. And for this tree, I'm happy to let it work. Now look closely at this stem. You can see the distance between these nodes. That's the internode. On the refined branch, long internodes can become a problem because we want the compact, fine ramification. But this is where I see beginners getting caught out. They see a long internode and immediately cut it back. But if I'm still building the tree, I may actually need that extension growth. If I keep cutting back every strong stem before it has done its job, I'm constantly resetting the tree. So I'm not asking, does this branch look perfect? I'm asking, is this branch helping me build this tree? Now this tree is different, and this is why I don't like giving you a simple calendar that says, September, cut this, because two Japanese maples can need completely different treatment. This one has a different structure, different vigor, different goals, and I can see a couple of shoots here that I don't want developing any further. This one's crossing, and this one's grown exactly where I don't want a branch. Those are much better reasons to prune than simply, it's too long. And there's an important distinction here. Light pruning and major structural pruning aren't the same thing. If I've got a small shoot that's clearly in the wrong place, that's one thing. But if I'm looking at a large branch that changes the structure of the trunk, I'm going to think much harder before making the cut. Japanese maple timing matters. RHS guidance allows shoots to be pruned during the growing season while they're still soft, while major pruning is generally better carried out in autumn or early winter. So I'm not saying never touch your Japanese maple in September. I'm saying know what you're cutting. Now this is where I'd be much more cautious. This is a structural branch. If I remove this, I'm creating a much larger wound. And with Japanese maple, I don't want to make a major cut simply because I've decided today that I don't like the branch. I'd rather have a reason. I'd rather have a plan. And I'd rather choose the timing carefully. Because once that branch is gone, it's gone. You can't put it back. So this one, I'm leaving for now. That's my decision too. Now let's talk about something else I want you checking before you prune. The health of the tree. We've had some hot and dry periods this summer, and Japanese maples can show that stress through things like leaf scorch. If the tree has struggled, this isn't the time to start removing loads of healthy foliage, just because you don't like the way it looks. Those leaves are still working, so my priority becomes recovery. Good watering, protected from excessive stress, good growing conditions, and then I can think about refinement later. And here's probably the biggest change in the way I think about pruning now. I'm not pruning this tree just for how I want it to look today. I'm thinking about next year. Every branch I remove is something I don't have available next season. So I'm looking at the structure and thinking, where could my next branch come from? Where's my future leader? Which branches could become part of the final structure? And that completely changes the way you look at the messy tree. Sometimes messy growth isn't a problem. Sometimes it's a potential. So if I'm standing here at the end of August, this is the checklist that I'm doing. First, is the tree healthy? Second, what am I actually trying to achieve with this tree? Third, is this branch causing a general structural problem? Fourth, am I making a light pruning cut or a major cut? And finally, what happens if I leave it? Because sometimes we only think about what happens if we cut, but leaving a branch can also be a deliberate decision. And that's something I want you to start thinking about. So let's come back to this tree. Remember this branch? At the start of the video, this was one that looked like it needed cutting. But now that we've actually looked at the tree, I'm leaving it. Not because I don't care about the shape, because I do. I'm leaving it because I know what this branch is doing for the tree right now. And later, when the timing is right, I can make that decision with a lot more information. That's the difference between pruning because you think you should, and pruning because you know why you're doing it. My last Japanese maple video was all about the mistakes that can set your tree back. This is the next step. It's all about standing in front of the tree and actually deciding what to do. Because good pruning isn't about cutting the most, it's about making the correct cut at the correct time for the correct reason. So before you reach for the scissors this September, look at the whole tree first. You might find that the branch you're about to remove is actually the branch you need to keep. So if you're like me and enjoy growing Japanese maples, please subscribe because I've got plenty more development videos up my sleeve, and I'll help you get the most out of your Japanese maple and see through all the myth busting jargon. Thank you.